on this edition for Sunday, May 30th.
Our military community is the solid spine of this country. It's literally the spine of the nation.
President Biden honors military families this Memorial Day weekend. In our signature segment, Asian American business owners hope to rebound after COVID-19 shutdowns and rising attacks on their community. And Sesame Street on talking to kids about the impact of racism and racial identity. Next on PBS NewsHour Weekend.
Isn't it cool, Elmo?
Very cool.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, the Anderson Family Fund, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg, the Leonard and Norma Clorfine Foundation, the Peter G. Peterson and Joan Gantz Cooney Fund, the estate of Worthington Mayo Smith. We try to live in the moment, to not miss what's right in front of us. At Mutual of America, we believe taking care of tomorrow can help you make the most of today. Mutual of America Financial Group, retirement services and investments.
For 25 years, Consumer Cellular has been offering no-contract wireless plans designed to help people do more of what they like. Our U.S.-based customer service team can help find a plan that fits you. To learn more, visit consumercellular.tv.
Additional support has been provided by and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. As many Americans mark the unofficial start of summer this weekend, in Delaware today, President Joe Biden attended a Memorial Day ceremony honoring service members who died for their country. Today is also the 6-year anniversary of the death of President Biden's son, Beau, from brain cancer. Beau Biden served in the Delaware National Guard and was deployed to Iraq in 2009. The president spoke at an annual ceremony at Delaware's Veterans Memorial Park about the toll that conflict and the war in Afghanistan has taken on American forces.
Every day since I was vice president, I've carried with me a card with the exact number of troops killed in our operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. Not an approximation or a rounded number. An accounting of every life laid down for our country over the 20 years of war. Today, it's 7,036 military members, fallen angels, have given the last full measure of devotion, as Lincoln termed it, in those modern conflicts. And we'll never forget.
As President Biden marked Memorial Day this weekend, his administration and Republican lawmakers remain far apart in negotiations over infrastructure spending. Republicans put forward a counterproposal this week on infrastructure totaling nearly $1 trillion, but only about $250 billion of that is new spending, leaving the two sides more than $1.4 trillion apart. Senator Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia is the lead negotiator for Senate Republicans.
Well, we disagree on the definition of infrastructure, and we've been working with the president to bring it back to the physical core idea of infrastructure that we've worked so well on in the past, whether that's roads and bridges, waterways, ports, lead pipes, transit, airports, and also the new infrastructure, which is we must have everywhere, a broadband. Those are great categories, I think, that we can work together on.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said today there needs to be agreement in the next week or so if any bipartisan deal is going to become a reality.
I think we are getting pretty close to a Fisher cut bait moment, but I'll tell you that on the fishing side of things, the negotiations have been healthy. There's a lot of conversations going on among members of Congress who have come forward with a lot of different ideas, in addition to the discussions that we've had with the group led by Senator Capito. So we believe in this process, but also very much agree that this can't go on forever.
In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott is expected to sign one of the most restrictive new voting laws in the country when the current session of the Republican-controlled state legislature wraps up today. The Texas Senate approved a version early this morning after an all-night session. The bill bans election officials from sending unsolicited mail-in ballot applications and adds new requirements for Texans requesting mail-in ballots. It also eliminates drive-through voting, gives new powers to partisan poll watchers, and restricts Sunday voting hours when many black churchgoers head to the polls. In a statement yesterday, President Joe Biden said the Texas law is, quote, an assault on democracy that we've seen far too often this year, and often disproportionately targeting black and brown Americans. It's wrong and un-American. Voting rights organizations say Texas is one of at least 14 states that have passed more restrictive voting laws since President Biden was elected. Republican lawmakers in Texas who back the new law say the changes are needed to restore confidence in elections and not because of false claims of election fraud. 2 people are dead and more than 20 injured following a shooting outside a banquet hall early this morning just north of Miami. Police report that 3 gunmen exited an SUV and opened fire in the town of Hialeah. The shooting followed a similar shooting on Friday in the Miami neighborhood of Wynwood that left 1 person dead and 6 wounded. At a news conference this morning, Miami-Dade's police director called the mass shooting a cowardly act.
This type of gun violence has to stop. Every weekend it's the same thing. This is targeted. This is definitely not random. My condolences to the families and to the victims.
As of late this afternoon, no suspects were in custody. The leader of a right-wing party in Israel threw his support to a so-called unity government today in a bid to unseat Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Naftali Bennett said he will join forces with the country's opposition leader Yair Lapid, a former TV host and journalist. Lapid's centrist party finished second in a recent election. After Netanyahu's Likud party failed to form a government, Lapid was given until this Wednesday to put together a coalition with at least 61 seats in parliament. Bennett and Lapid would rotate as prime minister every 2 years. Netanyahu responded in a televised address accusing Bennett of betraying the right wing and urging politicians not to join what he called a, quote, leftist government. Israeli and Egyptian officials continued talks today, part of the ongoing effort to shore up a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Israel's foreign minister, Gabi Ashkenazi, met with Egyptian foreign minister Sameh Shoukry in Cairo today. It was the first public visit by an Israeli foreign minister to Egypt since 2008. The foreign ministers discussed a permanent ceasefire after the recent 11-day war between Hamas and Israel, humanitarian aid, and how to rebuild Gaza. In Jerusalem, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with Egypt's intelligence chief Abbas Kamel today. Netanyahu said they discussed Israel's demand that Hamas be prevented from diverting aid meant for civilians in Gaza. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson married his fiancée Carrie Simons in a secret ceremony yesterday. The 56-year-old Johnson and 33-year-old Simons invited a small number of guests just before the Westminster Cathedral ceremony began yesterday in London. The couple have been living together since Johnson became Prime Minister in 2019, and they have a son who was born last April. Johnson is the first Prime Minister to be married while in office since 1822. For the latest national and international news, visit pbs.org/newshour. Before the COVID-19 pandemic forced many non-essential businesses to close in March of 2020, New York's Chinatown business districts were already beginning to see a steep decline in sales due to coronavirus fears and a reduction of tourists. The financial hit was made worse by a disturbing increase in reports of anti-Asian hate crimes, which have spiked in recent months. NewsHour Weekend's Laura Fong visited businesses that have started to fully reopen again in Manhattan's historic Chinatown and the Flushing district in Queens, home to the largest population of Asian residents in the city.
A year ago, Manhattan's Chinatown looked like this. But now, it's starting to come to life again. Restaurant owner Johnny Liu is thrilled he can fully reopen indoor dining. For 33 years, Golden Unicorn has been a popular dim sum parlor for large gatherings and a meetup spot for locals and out-of-town visitors alike.
Friends come here to have tea and chat. We do wedding parties and birthday parties. So many people unite here and socialize and meet friends.
But the COVID-19 crisis and citywide shutdown of indoor dining and other establishments forced many businesses to close for good. Golden Unicorn saw a dramatic 90% drop in revenue in the first few months of the pandemic. The two-story restaurant depended heavily on parties in its event space.
Menu? Okay.
Without that revenue, Liu rented a new space at the street level to pivot to a takeout business. and in July set up an outdoor dining space following strict protocols, hoping to stem the losses. But some Chinatown businesses are closing earlier than pre-pandemic times, in part because of the uptick in violent incidents targeting Asians. 47 anti-Asian hate crimes have been confirmed by the New York City Police Department in the first few months of 2021. That's an increase from 33 last year.
Have anti-Asian attacks created an environment where people are scared to go out after night?
Yes, because for many people who come to work, they live in Brooklyn and Staten Island because they use the subway at night. For attacks against Asians, I think it is a major cause. Employees are also worried that if they go back too late, they fear being attacked.
Indoor dining was reopened to 100% capacity on May 19th, but one of 2 dining floors at Golden Unicorn has largely sat empty.
When do you think this will be filled again? When are you hoping?
Maybe August
August?
In the meantime, 2 forgivable loans from the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program, known as PPP, have become a lifeline for the restaurant.
Because our PPP was approved for the first time and the second time, it allowed us to survive. 60% of the PPP can pay employees' wages, and there are 40% that you can use to pay rent and electricity and water bills, so we can maintain the operation.
The effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on Asian business owners has been acute. A Federal Reserve survey found that 93% of Asian business owners nationwide reported a decline in sales last year. And according to a McKinsey analysis, Asian business owners make up a large percentage of hard-hit sectors, 25% of food and accommodation services, and 16% of retail. Unlike Golden Unicorn, many small businesses were left out of the first round of the Paycheck Protection Program. Janelle Dorse is commissioner of New York City's Department of Small Business Services. The agency connects business owners to PPP loans, as well as city-funded loans and grants.
The PPP program brought about $25 billion into the city as of January of this year, but we still saw that we were still missing, based upon the number of businesses and number of employees, about $3 billion that did not come into the city, right?
Do you think that there should be, any particular funds designated for Asian-owned businesses that have struggled?
We saw an increase, of course, in hate crimes. I've personally walked corridors and in our Chinatown districts across the city and spoke to those business owners and heard from them personally the struggle that they're dealing with, one on the economic side, but also just being subject to racism and xenophobia. We have helped and assisted over 700 or so grants and loans to our small businesses in the Asian American areas and zip codes around the city to $10.4 million.
We think hundreds and hundreds of businesses closed.
Thomas Yu is co-executive director of Asian Americans for Equality, a nonprofit that had existing relationships with Asian-owned businesses and helped facilitate PPP and other loans across the city.
We have many loan counselors and officers that speak the many different languages and dialects from our borrowers in our communities. And we were asking a lot of city agencies and banks to put money in this pool and get it out the door as quickly as possible. But even that took forever. It didn't happen right away.
Unlike Manhattan's Chinatown that relies heavily on tourism for some of its business, across the river in Queens, the Asian business owners here depend mainly on the local community.
Flushing, Queens is one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse, neighborhood in the entire country. We have over 120 languages that's spoken here.
New York State Assembly member Ron Kim represents a large part of Flushing. An analysis of Small Business Administration data showed that one Flushing zip code had New York's lowest proportion of eligible businesses receive PPP funding last year.
There was a distrust of the federal government. There wasn't that much communication and an effort to make accessible the loans, the applications, how it works in our own different languages. And also there was bureaucratic layers. I mean, the system, the loans were more structured for traditional big type of companies and left the mom and pop immigrant-owned small businesses behind.
The latest round of PPP funding under the Biden administration prioritized smaller businesses, as well as women and minority business owners, who were largely underserved in the first two rounds of funding. One of the largest Asian indoor malls in the U.S. is located in downtown Flushing. Retail stores partially reopened in September, and the popular indoor food court is starting to see a return of customers. William Shao is vice president of New World Mall. He said many retail shops have been able to return with the help of federal PPP loans and city assistance.
And we've been closed for a while. Lifting a lot of the restrictions have been helpful, and a lot of people have been vaccinated, given more consumers opportunity to come out without the fear of getting COVID.
Assemblymember Kim said the direct stimulus checks in the latest round of federal funding has been crucial to jumpstarting the local economy. But in the long term, Kim says progressive taxation policies are needed to fill in the gaps. New York State lawmakers recently passed a tax increase on individuals making over $1 million in annual income, which is expected to raise an extra $4.3 billion a year.
We want sustainable revenue that's going to go to our schools, that's going to go to our social programs, and all the things that matter: public infrastructure, public housing. That needs consistent revenue streams.
Back in Manhattan's historic Chinatown, Thomas Yu thinks the future will depend on bringing in new types of business.
Maybe we can think about an arts economy, education-based economy that could bring people back in other ways, especially other second generation, third generation Asian Americans, that if they aren't coming back for food or the occasional visit, they need something more constant to come back for, and I think that's something that is really important.
Johnny Liu is optimistic that Golden Unicorn will rebound.
I like to do this kind of business and dining. That is why I do this business. I like the lively atmosphere because I feel very happy. It means I enjoy my job.
The deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others at the hands of police have elevated conversations about race and policing throughout the country. And when it comes to children, initiating and navigating how to talk about race can be complicated. To help with those conversations, Sesame Street is developing new resources, adding new Muppets to help teach children racial literacy and understanding. I recently spoke with Jeanette Betancourt and Kay Wilson Stallings from Sesame Workshop on their approach to tackling difficult topics and about the two newest members of the Muppet family. Kay, this has been a tough year for parents on so many different levels. When you were working on coming up with how these conversations could take place, what was going through your mind?
We know that children from a very early age see differences. They see color differences in skin. They see eye shapes. They hear language differences. And so to ignore it and to think that that's not something that kids are aware of is really wrong. And at Sesame Street, we've always modeled multiculturalism and inclusiveness and diversity. But we decided that we needed to do more than that, and that we really needed to lean in and be explicit and bold in talking to children about racial justice.
Jeanette, part of this includes two new Muppets. Tell us a little bit about them.
A little bit is that we wanted to model those conversations. And we also heard in our process of learning from both parents and caregivers, as well as advisors, that how do you present a safe space to do that? And we know the immediate connection with our wonderful Muppets, but we also felt in that deep commitment that Kay describes that we need to represent it in a realistic way. So we developed a wonderful Muppet who's Elijah, who's a dad and he's a meteorologist, and his son Wesley, who's curious and he enjoys the outdoors and is always asking, again, being a 5-year-old, the kinds of questions that we know children ask of their parents. So by modeling it through the eyes of a dad and his son, we feel that we're then modeling for all parents and caregivers.
where should a parent lead that child in conversation?
Well, the first thing that a parent shouldn't do is ignore the question. And what happens often is that children see things and they question, and parents sometimes have a tendency to shush them and to say, look this way, don't look there, and don't ask that question. You shouldn't ask that question. And so then children develop this idea that there's something wrong with the observations that they have. It's something wrong with the questions that they have. And then what could tend to happen is kids then can come up with their own conclusions. If they're not having these conversations about why someone's skin is a different color than their own, then they will make up their own reason for that. Right. And I mean, many of us have had experiences where I remember when my son was very young and he was on the playground with a child who was a white child, and they were holding hands and they were playing together. They had just met. And I saw this white child take my son's hand and rub his skin because he thought that it would come off, because he didn't have that understanding. And so it's really incumbent on parents and caregivers to have those conversations. As challenging as they might be, as Jeanette said, it's really important, because otherwise kids are going to come up with their own conclusions.
Jeanette, so how do the Muppets deal with this? How should we expect a police shooting or a tragedy of some sort to make it through into Sesame Street in a way that a 5-year-old understands and isn't intimidated by?
So we decided to begin with the basics of conversation. So our first explanation of race is actually the physicality of race. How does really melanin, a physical piece of all of our bodies, explain the differences in skin color? And in so doing, we have Elijah, we have Wesley, and we have Elmo asking a question based on something that happens. He picks up a leaf and he's wondering, why is that leaf such a different color? And it leads to this wonderful introduction about the physicality of race. And again, 2 things on that is the child's perspective, that moment of curiosity. And as Kay just explained in that very, very personal story, it's taking advantage of those everyday moments. From there, though, we are and will be, as we're going through our content launching, dealing more specifically with racial encounters. And so again, we model that from a child's perspective, keeping in mind that these are young children. And we want to make sure those conversations reflect realities, but also provide a level of comfort and way to talk about them.
Jeanette Betancourt, Kay Wilson-Stallings from the Sesame Workshop. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is PBS NewsHour Weekend, Sunday.
Finally, tomorrow evening, PBS will air the documentary Tulsa, The Fire and the Forgotten, and a PBS NewsHour Weekend special, Tulsa Revisited, to commemorate the 100-year anniversary of the massacre and destruction of Black Wall Street. Professor Carlos Hill, who appears in the special, is author of The 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, a photographic history which documents first-person accounts from survivors of the massacre. He reads us one of those accounts from business owner C.L. Netherland, who detailed the destruction.
On the morning of June 1st, I met the mob of whites at the door where I was. They marched me to Convention Hall with my hands up. From there, I was taken to the ballpark and saw many men and women who were homeless. There I slept on 2 benches. I left the park the next morning and looked up my wife, who was shopping with some friends. Then I purchased a folding chair, a strop and a razor, and went down on Greenwood amidst the ashes and ruins and started a barbershop. From a 10-room basement modern brick home, I am now living in what was my coal barn. From a 5-chair white enamel barbershop, 4 baths, electric clippers, electric fan, 2 lavatories, shampoo stands, 4 workmen, and a double marble shine stand. A porter and an income of over $500 or $600 per month, to a razor strop and a folding chair on a sidewalk. C.L. Netherland.
Tulsa Revisited airs tomorrow after the documentary at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Tune in or stream to watch. A thank you to the service members who have given their lives and to their families on this Memorial Day weekend. That's all for this edition of PBS NewsHour Weekend. For the latest news updates, visit pbs.org/newshour. I'm Hari Srinivasan. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and have a good night.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, the Anderson Family Fund, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg, the Leonard and Norma Clorfine Foundation, the Peter G. Peterson and Joan Gantz Cooney Fund, the estate of Worthington Mayo Smith. We try to live in the moment to not miss what's right in front of us. At Mutual of America, we believe taking care of tomorrow can help you make the most of today. Mutual of America Financial Group, retirement services and investments. Additional support has been provided by Consumer Cellular and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.